All right, I'm still doing videos on user requests. Let's talk about the third path. And specifically, we're going to talk about the difference between the third path, the Erzin forces, and the Mishran forces. So there were a bunch of factions during the Brothers' War, the two main ones being the Mishrans, led by Mishra, and the Erzins, led by Urza. Now, I call them that because they're both sort of conglomerates of other peoples. Mishra became the leader of an ethnic group known as the Falaji, who were typically lived around the Great Desert region in Teresier. And the Falaji were divided up into a bunch of different clans that Mishra united through conquest. Or more accurately, because he had a big, scary, honkin' dragon engine. So the bulk of Mishra's army was made up of Falaji soldiers, and a whole bunch of artifacts, including those dragon engines we talked about, and things like the transmogrants, which are genuinely just horrifying. Urza, meanwhile, was originally from Yodia, but ended up uniting the various nations along the eastern coast of Teresier. So his army was made up of people from these nations, Yodia, Argive, etc., into what's called the Iron Alliance, as well as Urza's own creations and things like the Yodian soldiers. So Urza, by the end of the war, controlled Yodia, Corlys, and Argive, although Yodia ends up falling to the Falaji. And Mishra ends up controlling all the Falaji in the Great Desert region, ends up conquering a city over there, and allies himself with Almaz. Here's a closer look at the map. This is where most of the fighting primarily happened. You can see the Kur Ridges were sort of a mountain that was a natural dividing line between the two forces. So a lot of the war happened in and around like Yodia and on either side of the mountains. All of this started, by the way, over this contested region called the Sword Marches over here, or the Suardi Marches from the Falaji. Now, what about the third path? All the way out to the west here in a place called Teresia City, which had been neutral in the war. It was very well known for its university and scholars. So as the war dragged on and on, a lot of scholars and other learned people went to Teresier to sort of protest. They didn't want to take part in either side. Now, I should note at this point that both Mishra and Urza's forces were primarily mechanical. So the third path was searching for another way. Enter Urza and Mishra's childhood friend Lauren, who had discovered the Silex. The Silex had inscriptions on it that sort of gave a clue to meditative techniques to access magic. Now, other people on Dominaria had magic for a long time, but the people of Teresier usually thought of it as like hocus pocus. They thought it was fake, or that it was just charlatan stuff. Among the leaders of the third path were Drafna, who had founded Latnam, which is a college on an island to the west. Feldin, who was an archaeologist who discovered the Silex. Herkel, who was Drafna's wife, and who ends up cracking magic the soonest, and truly becomes a master at it. And of course, the Archimandrite, who was something like both the mayor and dean of Teresia City at the same time, since it was sort of like a scholar institution. And so where the brothers both had access to these giant mechanical marvels powered by power stones, the third path used magic to defend themselves. Except when they came under assault by Mishra's forces, Mishra ends up destroying the city. And almost everyone except for Drafna is lost. Drafna goes home and uses his wife's teachings in order to basically found the first Teresier wizard school. Which is good he was on that island because they had to hide out during the dark where everyone came after any sort of magic or artifice in order to destroy it. Feldin ends up becoming a master wizard, but his love, Lauren, ends up dying. And he tries to bring her back and ends up becoming a master of all 5 colors of magic, trying different methods for bringing her back, from artifice to genuine resurrection, before he realizes he has to move on. Anyway, that's the third path in a nutshell. If you want me to cover a topic, post it in the comments.